Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the 2024 Australian Mental Health Prize. My name's Alan Fells, and along with Lucy Brogden, I'm co-chair of the Australian Mental Health Advisory Committee, Prize Advisory Committee. Lucy Brogden at the last minute has got ill. She thinks she may have COVID, and so I'm filling in totally for her. I'd like to start by welcoming Auntie Lola Ryan to the stage. Lola is an Aboriginal woman from La Perouse Aboriginal community located on the northern side of Botany Bay. She's a devoted mother to 3 children and loves spending her spare time with her family and 3 grandchildren. She's the Aboriginal health worker for the Child and Family Health team of Southeastern Sydney Local Health District, a position she's held for 20 years. Her passion is improving the health outcomes for Aboriginal families with children aged from 0 to 5 especially, and working on projects that can make a difference in engaging Aboriginal families to take care of themselves and their families. So over to you. Over here.
Thank you. Nagbi Naigan, Ani Lola, Naigan, Guli Darwal, Naigan, Nuranang Nalamanang, Bijigal, and Naigan Gamaringa Darwalenga. Welcome, I'm Ani Lola. I'm Darwal elder, and I'm from La Perouse, and I acknowledge we are on the land of the Bijigal, and I introduce myself in our Darwal language. Our Darwal language is being brought back into our community through probably around 10 years of research through our Gajaga Foundation, and it's been taught to our children in our schools, preschools and daycare centres. I go once a week to learn the language. I'm not great at it, but as you get older, the brain's not as clear and as good as what it used to be. But I didn't grow up speaking my language, so I would like to learn it now. Both my granddaughters learn the language, and I wanted to learn because they're only 8 and 5 at the moment, but they might grow up to be teenagers one day and tell me off in language. And if I don't know what they're saying, I won't be happy. At least I can reply. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all of you present here today. It's really a pleasure to be here to welcome you all to the 2024 Australian Mental Health Prize. And what a well-deserving prize to whoever wins it. As you know, I work in child and family health, so I wrote a program for our mums for their psychosocial and mental health and well-being, and it's Nulanang, my parent group that we hold every week in our La Perouse Aboriginal Community Health Centre, and it's been running since 2009, and it has won, I think we've won about 11 awards or something for it, and it's very successful, and it does help our mums, especially the ones who live in units and, you know, don't get out much. And the program is we introduce lots of arts and crafts and many health benefits to them on a weekly basis. And it's also run with our paediatric clinic and other services that happen on that day. On behalf of my community and my ancestors, I wish you all a very warm welcome. We are spiritual people. We believe our ancestors are always with us. So may their spirits be with you, keep you safe on your journeys, wherever they may take you, now and in the future. Budjeri, Nandawabi, thank you. Have a great evening, and congratulations to those who win. But even if you're nominated, it's still an honour. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Auntie Lola. And I also respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of this land on which we're meeting, pay my respects to elders past and present. I'd particularly like to welcome to today's awards the Honourable Emma McBride, MP, Federal Assistant Minister for Mental Health and Suicide Prevention and Rural and Regional Health, and the Honourable Rose Jackson, MLC, who has many portfolios, but is here today as the State Minister for Mental Health. So in about 8 or 9 years ago, around 2016, the world was different and yet so similar to 2024. There were natural disasters, elections in Australia, viruses causing issues. Do you remember Zika? We cheered on our athletes at the Olympics and the Paralympics in Rio. Donald Trump was campaigning to be US president. But here in Australia, an eminent group of Australians, some in this room, came together to create the Australian Mental Health Prize. And the prize recognised that there are many heroes working in this field. They may have official positions. They may have humble positions or just be individuals or family members or people with lived experience or volunteers or NGO workers who are all dedicated to contributing to a better world and to helping promote mental health, both at the level of society and at the level of helping individuals who may be struggling with some of the challenges. So the prize was set up in 2016 to raise public awareness of the importance of good mental health, to recognise the important work being done right across the country, and doing so to provide some incentive to improve services and outcomes for people with mental illness. Now, 9 years later, 19 prize winners later, public awareness is high and stigma, while not gone, has been reduced, less so at the more severe end, but on the whole, it has been reducing somewhat. And we must continue to improve services and outcomes, and this award in highlighting innovative and outstanding work and research being done all across Australia helps in that goal. Today, as we honour the 2024 winners of the Australian Mental Health Prize, we also celebrate the past winners and all the nominees who've inspired us over the past 9 years. This year, we're continuing to recognise achievements across 4 categories: professional, lived experience, Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander community hero. The expansion of the prize in 2022 has led to a greater diversity of nominations, showcasing advocates from across the country, which greatly impresses all of the judges. I'd now like to introduce the Vice President, Societal Impact, Equity and Engagement, Professor the Honourable Verity Firth, AM. Verity.
Thank you very much for that, Alan, and thank you very much, Auntie Lola Ryan, for your warm welcome to country. I'd also like to acknowledge that we're on the land of the Bidjigal people and pay respect to elders past and present. I'm really delighted to welcome you all to UNSW tonight to celebrate such a rich array of achievement in mental health. In fact, reading the bios of some of our award winners is truly phenomenally exciting, and I can't wait to hear more about your work. Now, I am a stand-in. Our Vice Chancellor, Attila Brungs, Professor Attila Brungs, is unfortunately unwell, probably COVID, and so he can't be here tonight, but he told me please to send his apologies, and he's really sad that he's missing out on this very special event. He also told me that I can expect to be really inspired by the stories that I hear about the fantastic work that's happening in mental health, in prevention, in treatment, in awareness, and the positive impact that this award is having on so many people and practitioners in this country. So since the 2023 prize was awarded just last year, a lot has happened in mental health at UNSW. Last year, we celebrated the $7 million donation from James Packer and the Packer Family Foundation to establish the James Packer Chair in Mood Disorders, working within the Mind Gardens Neuroscience Network. This year, we are very pleased to welcome Dr. Aswin Rathish, a leading clinical researcher who has been appointed as this chair. Dr. Rathish is focusing his initial research on people who are experiencing the early course of bipolar disorder and the best ways for them to access treatment. Last year, we celebrated with Professor Marie Toombs as she won the professional category in this prize for her work in suicide prevention and collaborative care models in Indigenous communities. This year, we celebrate Professor Toombs bringing her research expertise to UNSW in her new roles as Associate Dean, Indigenous for Medicine and Health, and also as a very welcome new member of the Mental Health Prize Advisory Committee. The discipline of psychiatry and mental health at UNSW continues to be a leader in the sector in this discipline. Among the many impressive achievements of the past year, I'd especially like to highlight two. Firstly, Professor Valsama Epen was awarded a $2.5 million NHMRC grant to lead a Centre of Research Excellence in Child and Family Health for priority populations. The centre will be based at the Fairfield Integrated Child and Family Hub, which is being supported by $6.5 million in funding from the New South Wales Government and a matching grant from the Paul Ramsay Foundation. This world-first, strengths-based and co-designed model of care will enhance child and family health so that every child, irrespective of their geographic, cultural and linguistic or economic background, will have an equal opportunity to the best start in life. Another significant achievement in the past year is the National Centre of Excellence in Intellectual Disability Health, headed by Professor Julian Treloar. The centre launched late last year with a goal to ensure people with intellectual disability get better health care. Both of these initiatives truly embody the UNSW goals of collective progress, turning ideas into action to advance progress for all. And before I conclude, I know I've listed a whole range of achievements, but we're very proud to be playing this role in such an important issue for our country. So that's partly why we want to sing the praises of our researchers. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the vast contributions of a past winner of this prize, Scientia Professor Gordon Parker. Professor Parker, who I'm sure we all know in this room, was a founder of the Black Dog Institute and a former head of the UNSW School of Psychiatry, and he recently celebrated 50 years at UNSW. So UNSW, the mental health of so many Australians and our understanding of this complex and sometimes vexing field is so much richer for Gordon's 50 years of service. So we want to thank you, Gordon, and congratulate you on this milestone. So I am sorry that the Vice-Chancellor can't be here. He is very sorry that he can't. I know that he would have loved it, and I know he would have been awestruck by your achievements. Congratulations to all of our prize winners, and my thanks also to our guests and to those who are seeing this event online a bit later. All your work improves lives. You promote mental health and prevent and treat mental illness, and that makes such an enormous difference in our community. It's invaluable. Your work is highly essential, highly invaluable, and extremely appreciated. And it's now, of course, my great pleasure to welcome the Honourable Emma McBride MP, Assistant Minister for Mental Health and Suicide Prevention and Assistant Minister for Rural and Regional Health.
Thank you very much, Verity. I also want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and to pay my respects to elders past and present. Thank you, Auntie Lola Ryan, for your generous welcome and also the significant contribution that you've made over decades to the social and emotional well-being of young people in your community and more broadly. We have so much to learn from First Nations people about social and emotional well-being across the country. I extend that respect to all First Nations people who are here with us today. I'd also like to acknowledge those with a lived or living experience of mental ill health and recognise your significant contribution to improving care and support for people living with mental ill health right across the country. I'd like to acknowledge the New South Wales Minister, my friend Rose Jackson, for the work that you are doing in mental health and suicide prevention, Professor Verity Firth, with your very long title, Professor Cheryl Jones, Dean of Medicine. It's so important for all of us to be here today, to stop and reflect in our busy lives and work and recognise the incredible contribution that each of you are making each and every day to the mental health of Australians. I'm fortunate enough in my role to be able to visit and travel regional and rural communities right across Australia and hear from people seeking help, supporting families and friends, and those providing care. And in those communities and during those conversations, I get to see the very real difference that you're making, that your research is translating into practice, that your work and the impact that it's having on people and their lives, and it's profound. The difference that better programs, treatments, lived experience, earlier intervention, clinical research make. It is significant. And in Australia, we are global leaders. And a lot of that is because of you and your policy making, your clinical work, your research. I also know the very real impact that mental ill health has on individuals and families and the ripple effect through communities, and that for too long, many people have not been able to access the support they need at the time they need it that meets their personal circumstances, which was why, since we've been elected, we've been working very closely with the New South Wales government and many people in this room to try to improve the system of mental health care in Australia. And I just wanted today to give you a quick update on that work and thank you for your contribution to it. We're introducing the new National Early Intervention Service so people can get help, whether that's online or over the phone, whenever they need it, earlier, whether it's in distress, and with that earlier intervention, really provide support and care to people when they most need it. We're also setting up Medicare mental health centres across the country where people will be able to walk in free without a referral or a diagnosis to get support and care from social workers, nurses, peer workers, psychologists and psychiatrists. And in the last budget, we increased funding by close to $30 million to make sure that in every centre there'll be access to a psychologist or psychiatrist. This will be part of a more stepped model of care alongside other support so that services better match the needs of that person at that point in time. And to support these reforms, we're building the mental health workforce. This week I announced that we're increasing the number of postgraduate psychology places, internships and supervisors in every state and territory. And I had the pleasure of doing that at the Bankstown campus of Western Sydney University, because it's communities like that, in campuses like that, where there is such growing need and demand and where we're going to be able to have a really big impact. And we're also recognising the invaluable role of peer workers, their direct experience, and establishing a peer work association and a peer work census to understand where they're working, in what roles, how we can mobilise them, professionalise them, and increase and amplify their impact. Together, these reforms will address the impact of mental ill health for individuals and bring us closer to a country where everyone has access to the mental health support and care that they deserve. But these reforms have only been possible with the support of researchers, clinicians, people with lived experience, and I am so personally and deeply grateful for the advice and contribution that so many of you have so generously made to the work that we're undertaking. In July, we announced the establishment of 2 new national mental health lived experience peak bodies, one for consumers and one for carers. The peak bodies are an important milestone in recognising the contribution of people with lived experience, and we'll continue working alongside the mental health community to progress these reforms. In closing, again, I want to thank each and every one of you for your work and congratulate all of you here, especially those from the Central Coast in row 2, for your incredible contribution. I know the difference that you are making each and every day. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Minister, for coming today. And I'd also like to acknowledge Verity and the University of New South Wales for their great general contribution to mental health, and in particular, launching and supporting and establishing this prize. So thank you. Now I'd like to hand back to you, Mr.
Aren't you reading out the recipient?
I am. Okay. Good. So, yes, fortunately, I know all about it, having been on the selection committee. So the winner in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander category is Professor Jill Coffin, leading Aboriginal researcher, deeply connected to Nyamgarnata County in the Pilbara, who created a learning program there based in the Kimberley region, which harnesses the healing power of horses to offer a culturally grounded alternative to conventional therapies. The program fosters trust, connection and empowerment amongst Aboriginal young people, providing a safe space for control and self-reflection. And the idea, the meaning of the term is horses helping, and reflects Julie's mission to incorporate cultural security into health and education systems. So I invite her to come forward.
Waringora, Anyamalini, Julie Coffin. Thank you very much, Aninola, Darawal people and traditional owners for the country that we're standing on. I feel a bit overwhelmed. Very, very fortunate, and all I can talk about right now is my gratitude. So I really want to say how grateful I am for even being nominated or thought of in such an award. And my very esteemed colleague, Professor Donna Cross, actually, I know, did the nomination. And Donna's someone very close to me. I've known her for around 35 years. And it's been a pleasure to learn and be alongside people such as her that are absolute leaders in the space. I'm living in the Kimberley region. I'm from 600 kilometres south from Port Hedland. That's where I grew up. And the Kimberley region you may have heard of and know it as somewhere very pristine and quite beautiful, but it also has the highest suicide rate among any population group in the world still. So this is what sort of drew me back to going up there. And one of the things in my life, when people often said to me, well, you know, what was it that made you turn left instead of right? And I always think, again, around my gratitude that horses found me in my chaos, and I wanted to give that gift away to our young people and give them the opportunity to experience some of those things that I had, which is that space of unconditional love and being seen and being true to yourself and living in the moment, and all those authentic experiences that horses offer us that, hate to say it, but humans are not really great at. And I always say horses are some of the best people I know. I'd also really like to thank the elders and the community in Broome. That's not my community. You know, I'm a Yangawada person. I didn't grow up there in Broome. In fact, I used to go there with one of my nanas on holidays when they still had a separate Aboriginal hospital. And she was a language speaker of 4 tribal groups that often were sent up to Broome for hospital and care. And she would go up, and our job was just to fill up the back of the ute with mangoes. And it was a really slow trip back because she had a really old car. And mostly they'd all be burst and no good by the time we got back to Headland. And people would say, oh, I can't believe you don't like mangoes. And I'd say, well, yeah. even the smell of mangoes. No. So I guess I just want to give you a really tiny insight into one of the days that I am very privileged to experience. So we've had around 2,000 Aboriginal young people part of our program over the last 4 years. And a typical day, I'll get to see up to around 15 young people, anywhere between the 6 and 25-year age group. I'll have the opportunity to provide one-on-one, sometimes group sessions to these young people and work with them through some of those things like, how do I self-regulate? How do I feel better? Why don't I feel good when I wake up? Some of these really complex types of scenarios that our young people are, if they're lucky enough, are going to school and facing, a day's education with lots of other complex issues in their backpack, and they never have a chance to unpack them. It's a very comforting thought as well to know that, we're possibly changing the way that a young person feels about themselves and how they see themselves in the world. And for us, that's probably the biggest and most important piece that we can support our young people to do. And I think if you all saw what I see in a day, if the rest of Australia saw it, then, it would be so easy to understand why this work is so important. And it's such a tiny piece, but it's a really critical missing piece. And we have to keep doing it. And it's been really hard, I've got to say. But I'm also very grateful for my family who always over the years been supporting my harebrained ideas. And this was yet another one, apparently, until everybody kind of saw, what the vision was and what the bigger piece is. And I really like that you touched on stigmatisation as well, because one of our biggest issues is that our young people are not accessing mental health or any healthcare. In fact, the stigma around attending something like a Headspace or some of these very well set up services for our young people is huge. So it's much better to say, we're going to Yadani Junga. So Yadani Junga just means horses helping. And the way we term it is, you guys are just going to come and hang out with the horses. So we know there's a clinical aspect and a whole science behind it. But for our young people, what matters is how do you feel when you come into that space and how do you feel when you leave? And that's what we kind of measure. I've had lots of debating discussions with people around how we should record this data and so on. And I have a data set, which again is a privilege in the space of 2,000 of our Aboriginal young people's journeys in coming in and being engaged in this kind of work. There is nothing like it anywhere else in Australia, and I know there's nothing actually quite like it anywhere else in the world. So I do want to thank all of those people that have supported me. I do want to thank our team that work really tirelessly and are amazing at what they do in the space and are the right people at the right time for our young people. And they're our Aboriginal assets in our communities that continue to shine and work with our young people as role models. And they also hold space for me, people like Auntie Di and our elders. It's really important that we all are getting our needs met in that space, including from the leadership position that I've been very privileged to hold. So I really want to say that this award is for all of those 2,000 Aboriginal young people that have privileged me with coming into this space with us, and also for the about 30 odd horses in my life that have held space and continue to do that for me. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite Minister Rose Jackson to the podium and to speak and then to award a prize. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name's Rose. I'm the New South Wales Minister for Mental Health, and I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners and paying respect to elders past and present, and extend that respected acknowledgement to Aboriginal people joining us. I'd also like to acknowledge Professor Fells and Professor Firth. If this is the B team, What a, sort of prestigious and impressive event that we are at, where Alan and Verity are the ring-ins. It's so wonderful to be here at such a prestigious campus as UNSW, and to be working alongside the team from the Australian Mental Health Prize, just to say a few words on behalf of the New South Wales Government. And really, we're just here to say how grateful and appreciative we are to all of the people working across the spectrum of mental health care in New South Wales for the work that you are doing. And there's just three sort of groups that I just specifically want to mention. Of course, first, are our clinicians and our academics, so many of whom are such incredible thought leaders and innovators and give so much of themselves to the work they do in their research, in their teaching, in their clinical care. Julie, clearly your work is incredible. They say if you want a friend in politics, get a dog. I think it's got to be get a horse. Now, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to fit that in Parliament House, but we can talk after. But so much leadership is shown by our clinicians and our academics, and I really want to thank them for choosing to work in the field of mental health care, and as Emma said, being such leaders as we do have in Australia in that field. So thank you so much for everything that you have contributed, and your work is so valued, and we want to partner with you to take your learning and the care that you're providing as clinicians and give you the best possible platform to do what you love and to help people. The second group that I want to acknowledge is people with lived experience. And I think there's been such a positive change over the way that mental health care is provided in recent years, where we really have made space for and platformed people with lived experience. And, I think often when we work in mental health, and there are still so many challenges and there's so much work to do, sometimes that can feel a bit overwhelming and it can be a negative conversation about how far we still have to go. I also like to talk about how far we've come. And if you think about the changes that have been made, even within the lifetime of people in this room, in how we talk about mental ill health, how we provide care, of course there is still so much stigma and shame, but we have come so far in destigmatising mental health. And the role of people with lived experience and peer workers has just been critical to that, really showing that they're not just consumers of care, and often they are consumers, but they're givers. They give so much through their work as peer workers and people with lived experience. And it has just been such a profound and positive change. And, from the New South Wales Government's point of view, we've been really pleased to see the work of the Commonwealth in this space that Emma mentioned. And we too have appointed senior peer worker leaders within New South Wales Health to make sure that those roles are acknowledged, to make sure that the profession is acknowledged, to make sure that those careers that allow people with lived experience to do so much of the work that they're capable of in a professional and formalised way. And the last group that I do just want to call out and mention, and it's the award that's coming next, is our community heroes and our community leaders. And these are people who volunteer their time to give support to other people because they care so much about helping people. And, I think there are people in the mental health ecosystem who have volunteered weeks, hours, months, years and years of their life because they care about helping other people live the fulfilling lives they're capable of. And I think volunteering is very good for your mental health, we know that, but it's also so incredibly fulfilling for people to receive support from people who are not receiving any money, are not receiving accolades often. They're not doing it for those things. They're doing it because they want to help people and make a difference. And those community heroes really make such a profound impact. And it's wonderful that the prize has acknowledged their contribution. And really, from the New South Wales Government's point of view, there is no words that we can say to express our profound gratitude to the thousands and thousands and thousands of people who work as volunteers in the mental health system, whether as volunteers for Lifeline, or in community organisations, setting up local charities, organising local fundraising events. They give so much of themselves because of their profound passion and empathy for other people. And it is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing about the human spirit. We may not be as good as horses, but so many humans have so much to give, and it is such a beautiful thing to see that in mental health. And it is really important for me to acknowledge our community heroes and say that from the New South Wales Government's point of view, we thank you so much for everything you do, and we really want you to know how thankful we are. So it's a pleasure to be here and to say thank you to everyone who gives so much to mental health, and to congratulate the award winners. And with that, I think we're on to our next award.
So, thank you very much, Minister. And indeed, our next award is Community Hero. And the winner is Dr. Marilyn Jane Anderson, a lifelong advocate for mental health and crisis intervention. She's dedicated over 25 years of service at Lifeline, leading initiatives that have trained over 45,000 individuals, including frontline workers, volunteers, community members in areas such as suicide prevention, mental health, domestic violence, grief and loss, driven by a belief in the power of community and the necessity for people to have the tools to support each other in times of crisis. She views her role as a calling, not just a career, to make lifelong a cornerstone of mental health support, especially in rural and regional areas where such services are often limited. So I invite you to give the award.
I said to Marilyn, when are you going to stop 25 years? She said, I'm going to go till I drop. This amazing woman. Come.
So thank you to those providing safe passage to us on these lands we're gathering tonight, to our dignitaries and our guests, and those behind the scenes who have shaped these proceedings. So when I learned that my friend and colleague David Westgate was nominating me for this prize, I attempted to dissuade him, but he was persistent. Surely I had just been doing my job, a vocational job that I was passionate about. I'd already received poignant recognition of those 25 years of service to Lifeline, and that was special enough for me. And so I was puzzled how my work could possibly be considered for further and special recognition such as this. And I did wrestle with imposter syndrome for quite some time. About my 30-year two-part career in the mental health sector. So despite my initial hesitation and doubts about deserving this, my journey has been filled with unexpected moments that felt much more like a calling than a career. So one such moment happened in 1990. I was volunteering on the crisis line at Lifeline Far North Queensland every second Tuesday. After one of those shifts, I went to leave the building and I found that my car's starter motor was faulty. So I went back into the building, we didn't have mobile phones then, to make the call from the reception desk. And at that very moment, the roster coordinator resigned on the phone. And as the fates would have it, I was sitting there waiting for my mechanic and was available for the call, serendipitously, Marilyn, would you like to be the roster coordinator? So I said, well, I'll give it a go, but until you find somebody else, I'll stand in because I can hear that you need somebody straight away. More than 30 years later, I'm still here. A journey that began by happenstance, but evolved into a two-part career, a two-part vocation, one of 14 years eventually heading up the training and supervision of volunteers on the Lifeline telephone crisis line in Cairns. The second part, of almost the same length, was taking that experience and flipping it into a social enterprise of fundraising, a model for Lifeline to contribute to what was now the national crisis line 13, 11, 14, not in Cairns but in Newcastle. So in part one, being a volunteer on Lifeline's crisis line was shrouded in secrecy, with its joint codes of anonymity and confidentiality, which still exists today, but then it was a code of honour not to tell anybody that you had any involvement with Lifeline whatsoever. It was that secret for good reason, because it was in a small regional area, because we only had a landline then. We certainly didn't have contemporary technology back in the 90s. There was good reason to protect the service with ongoing vigilance. Each centre was very concerned about keeping the identity of those on the volunteer line to very highly confidential, because you never knew if somebody could be deterred from making that call in the early hours of the morning, and they might be stopped because they thought it was somebody they knew on the other end of the line. And as an extension of that ethic, the 100 hours of preparation, the training that was involved that prepared people to go on that line, was also secret squirrel business. We even guarded against anybody knowing where we were going to our training every Thursday night and every second weekend, because the unexpected consequence could be that those people could be identified in a smaller community. It has changed now since we've been a national helpline. So the lowest of low-level visibility had a downside, because that precious training was behind closed doors. Part two of my career, my vocation, was to bring that training out from behind closed doors. And in 2012, not many Lifeline centres had begun to do that. So I was privileged to be at the forefront of that societal change, that very special training came out of the behind closed doors situation and entered the community. So I was an agent for that. So the challenge was to make it into a social enterprise model that benefited our frontline workers, and also from revenue earned to support the 13, 11, 14 crisis line. So my goal became equipping as many of those frontline workers as possible with skills in mental health awareness, domestic and family violence recognition, crisis support, saving lives. They were condensed versions of the training that we took to the volunteers that we were welcoming onto the crisis line. But for my role, I needed to put together a team of stellar Skills for Life trainers, and today we have 28 of those contributing to the delivery of around about 300 workshops a year to about 5,000 people a year. So I did a tally. I rose to the challenge of David's nomination, that in those 10 years that I've been doing this work, we have reached about 40,000 recipients of this training that has been bite-sized pieces of what we deliver to those who are going on to our crisis line 13, 11, 14. And across our footprint. So our footprint now is Newcastle, Central Coast, the Hunter, New England, Northern New South Wales, Geelong, and Northern Southwest Victoria and Western Melbourne, and for a short time, Alice Springs. So one of those areas that is under my jurisdiction is the Central Coast, and the Honourable Emma McBride has had many visits over time from one of our grassroots level fundraisers from Gosford North Rotary, an offshoot of which is SOCS, Save Our Kids from Suicide. So we've delivered about 7,000 recipients of that training with a lot of fundraising help across those 7,000 participants coming to attend our training. So while thought leaders, academics, advocacy groups, policymakers, government representatives are playing such crucial roles in shaping social change in the mental health sector, the grassroots level is where lives are saved, where mental health awareness is improved, and where our Skills for Life training can most benefit those in helping roles for when tough stuff happens. So this is the space in which I have worked, or as my friend and colleague Robert Sams would say, in community, for community, and with community.
So thank you for another terrific speech. So I'm going to ask Emma McBride, Minister, come to the podium while I read out the winner of the Mental Health Prize in the Lived Experience category, Dr. Louise Byrne, who's a pioneering advocate in the lived experience movement, and drawing from her personal journey with mental health and adversity, Louise has become a leading figure in embedding lived experience roles within and beyond the mental health sector. Her groundbreaking 15-year research program has established a comprehensive evidence base that promotes the value of lived experience as a distinct discipline and outlines strategies to support this unique workforce.
I don't know why I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous. I would like to thank Aunty Lola and to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we're meeting on. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. When I was 14 years old, a psychiatrist told me to give up on the idea that I would meet normal adult milestones, hold a job, own a house, get married. And winning national awards was certainly not on the agenda then, and it still feels a bit overwhelming, frankly, now. In 30 plus years of daily struggles with the lasting impacts of complex trauma being neurodivergent and acquired brain injury, there's nothing especially useful in my case that I would attribute to service use. And a great deal of damaging experiences, I'm sorry to say, that compounded, increased and extended my stress and distress. Happily for me, after my first adult hospitalisation, I was introduced to the idea of peer work, designated lived experience work. Immediately, something clicked, and I knew this was my vocation. Having already worked for some years as an unqualified youth worker, predominantly in First Nations-led youth services, drawing heavily from my personal lived experience, I held some sense of how the system works. I managed an appointment with the executive director of the local hospital and health service and became the first paid peer worker in my district. 20 years later, I've worked in a diverse range of designated lived experience roles across settings. Spent 15 years building an internationally applied program of research, guiding lived experience workforce development, and assisting to define our discipline. I've led the writing of key national and state policy documents, including the National Lived Experience Workforce Development Guidelines, and held numerous strategic consultancies to assist practical implementation of those research findings. Most recently, Using the evidence, my team and I have developed whole of organisation lived experience training for and about our workforces. The true value, I skipped a page. The training responds to a key recommendation and addresses an important gap by helping to build understanding, respect and commitment to authentic lived experience, values, principles and practice, explaining lived expertise as a discipline and fostering effective collaboration. It's a body of work I am proud of. It has often felt like an impossible task. The attitudinal barriers to truly embracing and understanding what our workforces have to offer are still significant. With this in mind, it is my privilege and my obligation to continue contributing. I'm very pleased to accept this award, not only because it acknowledges my work and the impact of that work, but also and importantly, because it acknowledges the centrality of lived experience, particularly lived experience workforce and lived expertise in moving towards a service system that genuinely meets the needs of people walking through the door. The true value of designated lived experience work is our collective knowledge. We have come together to make sense of our experiences in ways that is helpful to us, and ultimately organised that sense-making into a distinct discipline which provides a radically different way of responding to stress and distress without pathologizing people's experiences, without using language, concepts, or strategies that promote otherness. It is the heart-centered, natural relationship building, deep empathy, and person-to-person connection that truly distinguishes lived experience. And it is these logical, experiential, learned ways of behaving and responding that makes this work so effective. Everything I do is informed and inspired by our collective wisdom. So it would be remiss of me not to thank my community and acknowledge that. I'm grateful for the many lived experience leaders who have stood beside me and contributed to the work. To those who came before us, blazing the trails we walk upon today, and the emerging and future leaders who will achieve things we cannot even imagine. Finally, it would also be remiss not to acknowledge and thank Katie and Jill from Mind for going to the effort of nominating me. I was blown away and very grateful. My friends and colleagues who have cheered me on so generously, the members of my family who have celebrated every win, and my wonderful partner in crime and lawful spouse, Sean, who listens to every new idea, provides regular and accessible debriefing every day, and holds me at 3 a.m. when I regularly can't sleep with my mind too full of ideas, supports me in everything I do. Thank you, and thank you for this honour. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Louise. Our final prize is in the professional leadership category, and Professor Michael Burke is a distinguished mental health researcher whose work has significantly reshaped the treatment landscape of psychiatric disorders, both in Australia and globally. One of his team's most innovative contributions is using stem cell technology for drug discovery and repurposing. By developing a platform with patient-derived stem cells, Michael's team can identify existing medications to treat psychiatric disorders, speeding up the development of new treatments. This approach is opening up new avenues for conditions like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, chronic fatigue syndrome. So I invite the Minister to award the prize to Michael.
Into the light.
Right, we got it. Yeah.
Oh, it's my honour and privilege to thank the University of New South Wales and the board of the Mental Health Australia Prize. It's an incredible honour for me. I'd also like to thank the traditional owners. I'd also want to thank people with lived and living experience and their carers. You're the people who really motivate us to do what we're doing. We're really out to make a difference for people who struggle with these often awful and intractable illnesses. I also want to start off by thanking my team. Research is the ultimate team sport. You can do nothing on your own, and I'm blessed and privileged to have an amazing group of researchers that I work with who are responsible for all the important work that we do. I'm going to particularly shout out one person, and that's Professor Ken Walder, who really does the basic science stem cell work, which is the foundation of the pyramid that everything else is built on. But we have a team of 340 people who do this work. This is not one person's work. I want to thank my family who pay the price for being missing in action and being distracted. And I want to also thank Minister McBride and Jackson for the support of the work that we do. At an occasion like this, I kind of like to reflect and open out, take it a wide-angle lens, and reflect on the fact that Australia really is a world leader in mental health and mental health research. We lead the world in so many areas. Youth mental health, undoubtedly one of the world leaders. Nutritional psychiatry and lifestyle mental health, undoubtedly one of the leaders. Digital mental health, we have some of the world leaders sitting here in UNSW. And now clinical trials. We've been helped by a Bradbury moment with the USA making some very, in my view, appalling strategic decisions in the funding of their research, backing a series of losing horses and refusing to change direction. And that has essentially given clinical trial leadership to other countries, and we've gladly grasped that mantle. I also want to acknowledge that as Australians, we lead in many other ways. As Alan mentioned, we lead the world in stigma and public health awareness. Even though mental health, and everyone knows this, is the number one on the census, it's the number one health issue that people struggle with. Mental health is the number one issue on the previous census. It's the largest health problem. But we are the only country in the world where it's a top 10 election issue. There's no other country I'm aware of where if you look at the things that people are voting on, mental health is on the top 10 and has been for an awful long time. That's a huge achievement for us in our mental health system and our communication. But there's more that we can do. There are many gaps. I'm mindful of working in mainly mood disorders, that the missing middle. Now, it's an awful cliche, the missing middle, but let's put a name to it. It's largely populated by people who struggle with disorders like bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, panic disorder. These are not the high prevalence disorders. They're neglected by the public system, who just triage them out because they don't have the funding to manage this at a federal level. And at a state level, unless you are flush and living in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne or Sydney, you don't have access to private healthcare. So this is, for me, people with these problems are a major issue. Now, it pains me every time I do a clinic and I have to see another person with a highly treatable disorder. These are highly treatable disorders, given incorrect and inappropriate treatment. And it doesn't save money. These people end up on the NDIS, where they could be living fulfilling and productive lives. We need to have a much more optimistic, bullish approach to care. We need to get away from the sense that little enough is good enough. It's not. We need to offer optimal care to as many people as we possibly can. The last point I want to make is that I think we need much greater integration of academic and clinical service. I aspire towards creating learning mental health care systems. This is something we've been working to do in the Barwon region, where we can simultaneously generate evidence of what is appropriate and optimal care and embed evidence-based optimal care into the healthcare system. This improves the quality of care, it improves, and anything that improves the quality of care and the effectiveness of care is going to be cost effective. And I think clinical trials are a critical part of this. I dream of the day that mental health is like cancer, where people who have cancer say, I demand to be on the next trial of the next leading, of the new horizon of treatments. We need to aspire to that level of demand because we know that being on a trial helps people. You get access to care, but the penumbra of attention and care that goes with being in a trial is associated with clinical benefit, regardless of whether it's a nutritional trial or a repurposed medication. So there's much, even though tonight is a night of celebration, it's a night where we have to acknowledge that there's much more for us to do. We have focus, and I'm looking forward to continue to work on this and to work with my many partners, including here at UNSW. Thank you very much.
Well, I'd like to congratulate all the winners, thank the ministers for handing out the awards, and I'd now like to welcome Professor Cheryl Jones, Dean of UNSW Medicine and Health.
Well, what a special night. And I have the wonderful task of thanking people and congratulating people. So firstly, congratulations to our wonderful award winners, Julie, Marilyn, Louise, and Michael. Attila was right. Really, listening to your speech tonight was really inspiring and incredible accomplishments, all of you. I joined UNSW just 3 months ago as a new Dean of Medicine and Health. So this is the first wonderful mental health prize I've had the chance to be present at. And I really have been inspired by the stories and achievements and the unique contributions to the mental health landscape. And I say that not only as the Dean of Medicine and Health, but also as the parent of a young person who had a very difficult mental health journey. And I sat there as a parent watching her navigate that. So I feel this very personally, and I'm very proud of everything you've done. Psychiatry at UNSW is a wonderful discipline. UNSW is celebrating 75 years this year, and psychiatry has been a very big part of that for well over 60 years, and continuing to lead in research and in education in this important field. They're a key part of the university's continual mission to innovate and build in the future of healthcare. And we heard Michael talk about the importance of learning health systems. Well, we have this wonderful facility next door with the Health Translation Hub, and psychiatry are very much a part of that, where we can actually help innovation in mental health systems as well. Also, I'm looking forward to share that in 2025, the first students will start studying in the Graduate Certificate of Mental Health Practice. And this new program has been developed by the discipline head and advisory committee member, Professor Kimberly Dean, who's here tonight. With the increasing demand for clinical services in the community, this program will provide an opportunity for health professionals across the disciplinary spectrum to develop their mental health practice skills and expertise. Addressing these needs as they arise is one of the benefits of our close relationship with our health service partners and our community. I'd also like to add my congratulations to all the other nominees for this prize, and your work is seen and appreciated. I really look forward to seeing your names again amongst the nominees for the 2025 prize, which will be the 10th year of this amazing award. We're especially delighted to see this year nominations from all over Australia this year, and indeed to have 4 winners from 4 different states. And thank you also to everyone who's taken time to nominate someone. A nomination itself is a gift of appreciation and recognition that is incredibly valued by the nominee. Thank you to all of you who've been involved in supporting the Mental Health Prize. A program such as this requires a great deal of work behind the scenes. On behalf of UNSW, I'd like to particularly thank our Prize Advisory Committee. Your continued commitment to recognising and celebrating this essential area of health is greatly appreciated. I'd also like to thank the discipline of psychiatry and all the UNSW teams involved for their hard work in producing this prize again this year. And many thanks to Professor Fells and, in her absence, Lucy Brogden and all the UNS teams involved, and also to the Assistant Minister and Minister for joining us to present the awards this evening as well. And finally, thank you to everyone in the room and those online for watching the recording and for all that each and every one of you do to progress better mental health for all. Thank you again.
Thanks very much, Cheryl. Well, we've heard from some outstanding individuals. We're inspired by their example. But mental health will continue to flourish and to progress. Next year will be the 10th anniversary of the Mental Health Prize, and we look forward to seeing you here again same time next year. In the meantime, enjoy some drinks.